How exciting is this?
We're both here.
We are both here. Well, welcome back to the Progressive Rehab and Strength podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rori Alter, here with one of the clinical coaches at Progressive Rehab and Strength, Dr. Alyssa Haveson. It has been a very, very long time since we have recorded a podcast episode. Just a quick reintroduction, or I don't know if we need reintroductions. We're both physical therapists, competitive powerlifters, coaches who have had some life changes over the last year. Uh, we have not recorded a podcast episode in over a year, maybe a year, because I got pregnant again and had a baby again. But I was extremely sick, just like the first time I was pregnant. So I just couldn't get off the couch. I was bedbound basically pregnancy. Here we are 6 months after having my daughter, my lovely daughter, Maddie. She's very cute. She's in daycare full time now, and I feel great and ready to pick this up. But in other news, Alyssa, I don't know, maybe I'm like sharing too much of your personal information. Which is like totally me. But Alyssa, you have some life updates, so why don't you share?
Oh, I was engaged. That must be what
That's
you
your big
okay.
life update,
I was
yeah.
like I think that's it.
Yeah,
Unless there's
congratulations.
anything else that you can think of.
No, I mean, just, you've continued to do your amazing work with rescuing cats. So Alyssa, you have a cat rescue with your family, and Alyssa with her medical background. We, obviously as physical therapists, we have a medical background. You tend to handle the extreme cases, the very sick cats, the cats who really need true rehab and medical attention. So a lot of amputees, infections, pregnancies. So you've had a lot of cats coming in and out of your life over the last
Yeah.
year. I love it. I
Maybe too
really
many.
No, honestly, like I'm not a cat person at all. And really I just strongly dislike cats. Sorry to anyone who loves cats. But I love all of Alyssa's cats. I love all your cats. Just because of the connection that I have to like knowing your journey with them. And how much you care about them, and all the good work that you do with them. Even like obviously dogs, you know.
Yeah, our
Um,
rescue helped a dog actually the other day who seems like it was a probably a breeder dump in
so sad.
a neighborhood near me. So she's currently on a hold with the
Yeah.
SPCA, but yeah.
Oh, and you've even had some issues with like frogs in your backyard and fish and
Ducks, birds, it's just
yeah.
usually cats. Unfortunately, there's a lot of homeless and stray
Yeah.
or feral cats that need help.
And even like I feel like every time you go to nationals, you're rescuing.
I can't go anywhere.
No, Alyssa cannot go anywhere without like finding a cat or a mama cat and her kittens in need. So anyway, that is like Alyssa's I don't even want to say like side job. I want to say like your second job is this amazing thing that you do. So I don't like cats, but I like every cat that you have, and I like getting updates on all of them, um, which are interesting.
And
Anyway,
disclaimer, anybody listening, please get your cats fixed.
yes, please. We don't need more feral cats running around.
Mhm. If they're
Um,
outside, if they're inside, please get them
yeah,
fixed.
yeah. So you're not like an old cat lady. You are a true cat hero. Should probably call you Catwoman. It's true. Um, so anyway, I love it. Love your cats. We just have had a lot of things going on, and it just hasn't been in the cards to do podcasts until now. So with that all said, I'm a retired, semi-retired, or on sabbatical from competitive powerlifting. But that's all because of like pandemic and being pregnant at that time and having another kid. It's just been my focus has been more on business growth and family growth than competitive powerlifting. But Alyssa, which ironically is so funny because I feel like I was competing and I was like, Alyssa, you need to compete, you need to compete, you need to compete. And then once I basically got pregnant and stopped competing, you started competing again, which is kind of funny. I didn't even realize that until now. But we're gonna do a series on powerlifting competitions, and I'm gonna do this series of podcasts with Alyssa because Alyssa is a very strong competitive athlete, and you just in and out know the rules of the competition, the aspects of competition, um, from a competitive standpoint, from a ref standpoint, because you are a referee. You're an official to the highest level. Are you
I'm an
international?
international referee,
Yeah,
but I'm a cat 2. So there's cat 1 and then cat 2. So those are the 2
right.
highest.
Yeah.
I'm not
So
cat 1.
you're a very high level international referee. So you know the game and the sport from that aspect, from the athlete aspect, and from the coaching aspect. If there's anyone that you want to handle you in a competition, Alyssa is the one. She's fantastic because of the three elements that she brings into competition. Not to say that I'm bad, not to say that John's bad, um, but Alyssa, you just have this extraordinary mix of things that go into a game day coach. So, with that being said, com- competition is something that a lot of strength athletes or barbell athletes are into, whether they're a novice lifter and they're just starting to they're just starting their strength journey, or they've been on their strength journey for a really long time and they've developed their skill and their strength. um, it, at some point in someone's strength lifting journey, they get a little bit of an itch to try a competition. And then that itch might turn into something competitive on a larger scale, or someone thinks about right from the bat, from their first competition, they'll think about, I want to be this like really high level power lifter. So even before they do their first competition, they know their numbers. They're like, I'm really strong. I've seen competitions at a local and national level, and I think I can be competitive at a regional, state, national level, whatever. So they go into their first competition with the idea that I want to be a competitive, not just recreational. So what we're going to do with this podcast today is really talk about um, these different groups and what it means to do a competition and how we choose it at the right time. So, with that said, how does this topic of conversation usually come up with, let's say, a newer lifter? So, someone who's been, barbell training for maybe like 6 months to a year or two. How does this conversation usually come up with your athletes?
Yeah, so I think usually there's 2 options. Either they're gonna bring it up or I'm gonna bring it up. So they've started to train, they're making progress, they're hitting PRs because if they're new, everything is, as we start, everything is a PR. And they start to realize, okay, like they're seeing this progress that they're making, they're getting excited about it. And either they'll ask about a competition or, and depending, and it's not everybody, because I know competition isn't for everybody. Or I might bring it up and say, hey, do you think you might want to do a meet? Because from my perspective, I also want to see that they are, performing the lifts well. And I don't want to get caught up in like the weight and hitting PR. So I like to have
Right.
somebody training for a while, really like they've got their technique under control, things are going well. And like I said, it's not for everybody. When people start with me, and I'm sure with you, sometimes I get that, well, I don't want to be a power lifter. And I don't push it on anyone. If I mention it and someone's like, no, that's, you don't have to be a power lifter to work with us. But yeah, I mean, so it can come up from either side of things. And I know it can be, I think that sometimes people need a little bit of a push because they want to do it. but they aren't confident enough, or they think, well, like, I've only been training for a year. Should I really be doing this? So
Yeah,
they need a little bit of a push to do the thing that they're scared to do but want to do.
I think
And sometimes,
that's a good point. Here I go, interrupting as usual. But I think sometimes when we as coaches we'll see like, you know what, their technique's really good, they're hitting PRs, they've kind of like surpassed the numbers that they originally like sometimes lifters will set goals like I want to deadlift 225 or I want to bench 135 or squat 270 like whatever and then they hit it and they're like what's next or we see that maybe there's a local competition coming up and we're going to be at it. So it's a good idea to say, hey, I'm going to be at this competition with other lifters. This might be a good opportunity for you to have fun, experience the community, that kind of thing.
well, and I think so. You probably see more people in person than I do. I mean,
Yeah.
basically remote. So a lot of my clients who do first time local meets, they're on the other side of the country and I'm not there. But what I like to do is ask them who's going to handle them and teach them and their handler like what meet day is going to look like. This is what you can expect, because I think that that's the one of the more intimidating parts of competition for people. It's the unknown. What's going to happen when I walk through the door? How am I going to know when I go onto the platform?
And I don't want to get too far ahead with that because we do have a podcast episode that we're going
Yeah.
to record about kind of like the rundown of meet day and like how to game day coaching or game day execution. So what I was going to say was is that sometimes when you bring up the idea of the competition or the athlete learns about what a competition is because when you're in this world they'll hear about it. Um, they're like, well, I'm not strong enough, or how strong should I be to do my first competition? And I think for anyone, it doesn't matter because you're I think my belief, especially if you know, you don't have any high hopes for high level lifting, because sometimes we know right from the bat that we might be a very high level competitive athlete. It's really just about going in, having fun, meeting the community, getting your feet wet. So for me, when I have myself or clients who are competing locally, and I really reach out to anyone who's kind of in like our tri-state area to say, listen, we have a competition coming up, I'm going to be there with an athlete or two, just come watch it. Even if you don't want to compete, come watch it because your teammates are there. You're going to learn about it and you might find it interesting to have a goal to set. Like in training, yeah, we set goals with our clients. And I think we are going to have an episode on goal setting, I think. Um, but let's say you've hit your goals in training. Um, I always get the like, what's next question, sometimes I think you run into this a lot too. We've had this conversation where like lifters are like, well, what goals do you have for me as the lifter? And as a coach, I don't really have any specific like number goals for the lifter other than helping them set realistic goals. I think that's important to think about because sometimes it's not the number that we're concerned about. It's like the grand scheme, the grand picture. Um, but s- sometimes lifters really do need a thing like an end point because sometimes it's like why do people register for a 5K, a 10K if they're not, or a marathon if they're not gonna to win the New York City Marathon? It's because we want something to train for. It keeps us motivated. It reminds us to get into the gym every day. So
We're really competing against ourselves. So in my opinion, unless you're in the top few lifters of the weight class in the entire federation at nationals, where that's when you're really talking about being competitive. Because if you are talking about being competitive at a local meet, you're not competing against anywhere near the pool of people that exist in a federation or in a sport. So at that point, for most lifters, this is a competition against yourself. You want to be better than you were at the last meet. You want to, and on meet at the first meet, you're going to hit PRs most likely because you've been training for it. It might be your first meet. It might be kind of your first time getting to these weights. But we can't compare it to anything. A PR on the platform is very different than a gym PR. So it's really, and the more that you can just focus on yourself and compete against yourself and make yourself better and not worry about what everybody else is doing, the more competitive of an athlete you will eventually become. And then
Yeah,
you might
that
look
goes
around you and say, oh, I'm here with the best of them. But that
yeah, that
doesn't
goes
happen
for
by chasing them.
any level,
Yeah.
on the recreational novice powerlifter or strength
Hmm.
athlete to the highly competitive international lifter. When you're in the competition, you should focus on yourself because the more you focus about what everybody else is doing, the more that's going to influence your performance. All this to say that for the novice competitor, so the person who's never done a competition before, it does not matter how strong you are because the competition is for you in that first meet. Have fun, don't bomb, don't miss lifts, like go perform well,
Hmm.
experience the flow of competition, meet people in the sport, meet your people in your lifting community, meet people that work with your coach, see your coach maybe for the first time in person, have your friends and family come see what you do. Um, and I think for some people just doing a competition once a year or every so often is enough. I we love to talk about Doug on this podcast. um he did his first competition in October, last a year ago October. I was supposed to handle him, but I was so sick that my husband took him. Oh, my husband went and handled, or John, Coach John, also with PRS, went and handled Doug and Robin at the competition. And Doug is like 79 ish, around there. He's been working with me for about 2 years. Um, we've had him on the podcast, and um, his wife, his son, and his daughter-in-law came to the competition. I think he went 8 for 9, missed his third. I don't know, maybe he went, I can't remember, it was so long ago. But he had a really fun day. He learned so much about it. He hit numbers that he'd never hit in training. And his family was so excited to be there. His daughter-in-law made a video of the competition, like really cute. And then I asked him in October when that meet came around again, I was like, "Do you wanna do the competition again?" He's like, "Nah, maybe next year." He like wanted the experience. He had such a great time. He had a great day with Robin and John and his family, but he has no interest in doing it this year, but maybe next year. And that, Robin was at that competition. Robin, one of our clients, Robin, she's been with me probably since the beginning of PRS. She does like one or two competitions a year, and that's enough for her. She competes against herself. She went to bench nationals one time, just honestly, she went to bench nationals for fun with her team. We had a bunch of the PRS girls go to bench nationals. I was there, she was there, Steph, and like just a bunch of people on our team were there, and she qualified and she went, for fun. It was close to home, but for her, it was just all about fun. And then for other people like me, bench nationals was like, I want to win bench nationals and I want to go to bench worlds. So there's, on the platform at any given point in time, there's going to be everyone's going to have some different goal, which is why you can't compete against anyone on the platform other than yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, a lot of it has to do with who you are, where you are, how long you've been training, how you stack up to everybody else. But again, that's usually not something we're thinking about from the beginning. We've
Yeah.
got to go in and just think about and I always kind of say it like this, if you're worried about whether or not you're going to win at your first meet or how good you're going to be, that's like people have been doing this for years. So thinking that you should show up and do it your first time and be better than everybody is that's just not usually how things work. Sometimes,
Well,
sometimes that
so let's
happens.
let's talk about the 3 novice powerlifting competition competitors. I don't wanna see I don't wanna say 3 novice competitors. Well, powerlifting competition athletes, I guess. So we have the recreational local leveler. We kind of named it when we were outlining this episode. That's the Doug and the Robin, you know. They do it for fun. They do it to have a goal periodically, keep things interesting, hang out with their team and their coach, and meet the community and all that kind of stuff. Test themselves. Like I would say that John, my husband, he's a recreational local leveler. He likes to do periodically a competition to outperform himself. You know, have something to train for, and just go and like improve his total, show himself that he's made progress, and then go back in the gym and do work again. Um, and then we have the natural born athlete who will show up at their first competition and qualify for higher level meets. Or even show that like when we look at their numbers that for whatever reason they're very strong and they'll probably place in the top 5 at nationals, you know? Um, but even still, you don't have to go into that first competition wanting to win or aiming to win because you'll probably win anyway, you
Yeah.
know? Really what you should focus on is learning the competition, experiencing competition, making sure you like it, and going 9 for 9, setting a foundation for fun too, because if this isn't fun, you're not going to want to do that. And we talk about that all the time. Um, and getting what you need to qualify for the next competition, especially if you're already thinking long term as the natural born athlete going into their first competition. You don't want to like bust your nut on the first competition. You got to, and we'll have an episode on kind of like annual planning, you know, for like the national and international circuits, there's a lot of competitions every year. And we need to kind of pick and choose where we spend our energy. So that natural born athlete still has the same goal of going in and having fun and doing well and qualifying. And your qualifiers on a local level at most local meets, will probably lead you to win or put you up in the top 3 if it's a stacked weight class at a local level. Um, and then we have the marinator. That's kind of someone who has potential. Um, I would say that like Robin and Steph are kind of marinators. Steph, we've had on the podcast. She just and we're I hope to get her on the podcast soon, because she qualified for the NAPF Pan Am competition bench competition and she won. And Steph is she's really been like a local level lifter, has gone to the American Open a couple we don't have do we have the American Open anymore? No, we don't have that anymore.
I don't
American
know. I mean, so USA Powerlifting
Yeah,
doesn't,
right.
but
Um,
I don't believe I don't
did
know
I
why.
say meanderer? I meant marinator. What did I say?
I think you said marinator.
Marinator. Um, well, like, you know, it's the person who is strong, has a little competitive drive in them, but needs to kind of like be at the local level and like do well and kind of build their total at the local level for a couple of years or maybe a year or two before they get to that circuit where they're competing um at they're competitive at a national or regional, national or international level. Anything else that you can think of on these 3 types that you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I think that The type that you were just talking about is really the ones that are they might be starting it to be for the recreational purpose, but
Right.
they are probably more seriously looking at building their total, and have the potential to build their total to something that is going to get them to a higher level.
Yeah. So one thing that we, especially with this like natural born athlete, one thing that we really should think about and put into their minds from the beginning is the two things: the financial elements of the sport, and annual planning. They kind of go hand in hand because, like we alluded to, there's this circuit for higher level competition, right? It's changed. I've been out of the loop, and this is kind of like where you come in. It's changed since I've gone on my sabbatical for having babies. There's been this whole political thing that happened within the powerlifting world, but now there's pro meets, there's regional, state level. There's the Arnold, there's
Well, there's nationals, so the pro meets are at the
nationals.
Arnold. There is
Yeah,
also um, a non-pro meet. So there's still an Arnold's Raw Challenge, but
right.
there's a pro series. Um, and really it is this sort of cycle because you have to qualify for nationals. And now if and this is USA powerlifting that we're talking about. Other federations have different qualifiers, have different sort
Ways
of a
of
different
qualifying.
cycle of
Yeah.
of
But
meets.
even in like the new federations or other federations that exist, there is this series that you have to go through from like, especially if you've never competed before, you have to start at a local meet to qualify for the next meet to qualify for the national or pro circuits. So go ahead.
Um, Correct, except with USA powerlifting, you're not really the only thing that a local level meet at this point is going to qualify you for is to compete at regionals. But if you want a qualifying total for nationals, it's got to happen at a state meet or higher. So you can go to states. Um, uh, but you can't go to regionals, but you don't have to go to
You don't have
regionals
to
to
go.
go to nationals, but you can't go to regionals without a qualifying total for regionals. Qualifying totals for regionals are different than those for nationals. But the thing that we run into is, you qualify, say you want to qualify for nationals, you got to do that meet. Then there's nationals. And if you do well at nationals, which is not easy to do, but if you earn a pro card at nationals, then you're going to get an invite to pro events. And then we have to look at the calendar, which isn't always perfect. At that point, you really don't need to worry about another qualifier for nationals the following year unless you plan on moving down a weight class, like you have those qualifying totals.
Right.
But if you look at like the pro meet at the Arnold, which is going to be in March, and then nationals is in June, would it be ideal if if we had a little bit more time between? Yeah. So if I've got somebody who's a novice lifter looking at scheduling, I might say, can we push that next meet back a little bit? But in these cases where, well, going to nationals the next year is going to open the door to all the big meets the year after that, we should do it. And it's really a matter of planning and setting goals and what training is going to look like. We're not going to necessarily expect to see the same amount of progress in 3 months as we would if we had 6 months to train. So, and then we've got to manage fatigue coming out of a meet and going back into a meet. These are all things that we have to consider. And then also, all of this travel might not be local. It might be on the other side of the country. And are you able to take off work, uh, afford to fly, afford a hotel, afford the
Hmm.
entry fee, afford everything that goes along with it? I think a lot of people are often willing to like figure out how to make that sacrifice because sometimes it's a once in a lifetime
Hmm.
opportunity. But other times we have to look at, what, this is going to be financially very stressful. Do we want to pick and choose here? Um, so and that doesn't all have to happen at the beginning before you even go to nationals the first time. But yeah, I mean, when we're talking about nationals, sure, you've got to consider, there was like a couple years ago, we flew to Las Vegas or like Utah. So they're further flights. They're,
Yeah. I mean,
for me, because
sometimes they're in like weird places that you aren't interested in going to, or sometimes they're in places that are very popular and expensive to fly to. And, airfare is expensive and hotels are expensive. And I mean, you know, it can get really expensive. Um,
It does usually bounce around from sort of east to west. So, like last year, it was in Utah. This coming year, it's in Georgia, I think.
oh,
No,
it was in Georgia a couple of years, 2016,
it was,
Atlanta.
where is it going to be? It is going to be in Georgia. Yes. So for me, that's easy. It's a
Yeah.
much easier trip, but
And then you also have to think about, like, are you gonna have a coach there? And if you do have a coach there, how much does your coach cost to help you on those days? Local level, we have different pricing points for local level versus 2 hours, 3 hours from where we live versus have to fly and like be there. So um you just have to think of the whole thing, how much it really does, like, the higher level meets really do interfere with your daily life for a couple months, in terms of training, planning, and then travel, taking off work, family, like missing things, and then financially. So, uh, with all that said, um, we will be talking about um, training for competition, what weight classes to choose, how to choose, what the weight classes mean, how to choose your weight class, when you should and shouldn't cut. We're going to be talking about goal setting in competition. We're going to be talking about injuries, training into, like, if you have a training injury leading into a competition, um, and if you get a injury in competition, what should you do? I'm trying to think, what else are we talking about in future podcast episodes?
that's a great question.
I know. I do have an
I
outline
think you
somewhere.
covered most of it.
Here, hold
Um,
on. So, weight classes, strategy, so like attempt planning, goal setting, the like kind of like picking your competitions and timeline for competitions, and then injuries and training into competition with an injury, or finishing or pulling out of a competition with an injury.
and
Like,
we'll touch on some things like dots and scoring
yeah.
and those types of considerations and how they relate to weight class and when we need to worry about which. And
And all these things should not, if you are a new competitor or a new lifter thinking about doing a competition, shouldn't scare you, because it's just information. Um, Really, what we want from our lifters, like athletes, like I said, always ask, like, what do we want from what are our goals for you as your coach? Really our job is to keep you healthy, keep you making progress, keep you happy, and hitting goals, realistic goals that you want to hit. So we have to set realistic goals. So from the totally new lifter who's never done a competition and just wants to have fun, these episodes are for you. And if you're a competitive lifter, or you want, like, if you're a current competitive lifter, these are really good episodes for you. If you're a current recreational lifter or marinator lifter, if you're a coach, these episodes are going to be really good for you, because they'll give you more of an insight on how to think about competition, how to plan for competition, how to enjoy competition and be successful in competition. So, I'm happy to be here. Alyssa, I'm so happy you're here with me on the podcast again. And I look forward to recording the next episode. If you guys have any questions for us, you can reach us in our Facebook group. It's called the Secret Society of Barbell Mastery. Just look it up, or it should be in the show notes. We do form checks, although I've been kind of slacking on my form checks. Uh, on Wednesdays and Fridays, we do live Q&As in there. Form checks are really, really helpful, especially if you're going into a competition. You got to make sure you're pausing your bench and getting low enough on your squat. Um, and we also have Instagram at Pro Rehab Strength. I'm trying to think where else can they find us. We have a website, progressiverehabandstrength.com, tons of articles, education, webinars that you can check out. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.